I know you like that.
How long you been back, man?
I see the girls in the club, they getting wild for me. And all the
Good morning. It's the Saturday show, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, joined by Alex Napoles every Saturday, 10 to 12 a.m. Alex, it's game day, dude. Let's do this thing.
It's game day. It's another week of college football. And hey, show number 2. Let's do it.
Yes, sir. Clemson, Georgia, about to start. That's one of the biggest games of the day today, so definitely going to be tuned into that one. But Alex, let's start the show off with your highlight of the week, as we always do, before we get into the deep stuff.
Honestly, my highlight of the week, it's been a busy week, so I haven't really had a chance to do anything too fun. So I think highlight of my week was probably just sitting back, playing college football, and playing Fall Guys. I've been in a big Fall Guys kick lately.
There we go. We love some Fall Guys. College football, you Dynasty or Road to Glory?
Still Dynasty.
Yeah.
I'm in 2045 in one of my
gosh.
dynasties.
Who's your team?
Right now, Penn State.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I took over Utah State. I moved them to the Big Ten. I won back-to-back natties.
Oh,
and
okay.
then some playoff exits after that.
Oh, man.
Trying to get back to the natty this year. No, I feel you, though. It's been a really busy week. I'd say my highlight of the week was probably kickoff Thursday night, and we're going to get into Utah versus SUU here in a second, but it's just such an exciting time of the season, of the year, really, here at the station, and I know everybody was pumped for kickoff. It's really cool that Utah plays on Thursdays, so we can kind of get started a little bit early. But then today it's game day for Utah State and BYU, and we kind of go into game one with a lot of questions, but I mean, it was really cool to get the first taste of college football Thursday night, even if my Thunderbirds got bageled on the scoreboard. I thought we were going to score some points, but missed field goal, and it's a 0.
Hey, they showed some good signs. I thought there was a couple of players on that, especially on that defensive line for SUU.
Oh yeah,
that I thought really stepped up. But you're absolutely right, Christian. I thought our first pre and post game here with the Utes pre and post game show here on Thursday night went absolutely fantastic. I thought the game was really really good, and it's just exciting. It's exciting to have college football back. It's exciting to be right back into the thick of things, right into our busy season, and it's fun here at the station being able to cover all these events.
Definitely, yeah. That you were on the pregame. You were producing for the pregame postgame show here on the Zone. We're gonna have BYU pregame and postgame tonight, as well as Utah State. We carry the whole broadcast for the Aggies, pregame, the game, the halftime, postgame, everything. So full slate of college football here on the Zone. But let's get into this SUU-Utah game, Alex. Utah wins 49-0. Obviously, it's Cam Rising and Brant Keithy. Their return to action, both of them missed basically they missed all of last year with injury. So that really, really sucked to have them miss games, but it was nice to see them back on Thursday night and especially taking hits. I mean, Cam Rising especially, and Brant Keithy too. I mean, he had that touchdown where he carried 4 Thunderbirds into the end zone with him. They took hits, and there were a couple times with Cam where they make you hold your breath a little bit, but it's needed to knock that rust off, and I thought they looked really good.
Absolutely. I thought a lot of us maybe came in with the expectation, maybe the idea that there was going to be a little bit of rust on a Cam Rising in that passing game, but Cam Rising only played one half, and he finished the game off with 254 yards, the 5 touchdowns. Absolutely incredible from Cam Rising to come back, to have that performance, and kind of maybe ease a little bit of Utah fans' expectations, right? There was the questions, there was the concerns, if he was going to come in with rust, if he was going to be back to his old Cam Rising self, and it looked like Cam Rising of the old. And he wasn't afraid to run, and I thought that was also kind of important.
Yeah, and I would definitely say that was a point of emphasis for him going into the game, was kind of showing, not necessarily even if he wanted to show it off, but kind of just telling himself, hey, I've got to move out of the pocket. I've got to take a couple carries down the field just to get my mind right. And so, moving forward into the next couple games, I can do this.
Absolutely. I think it was more, for me anyway, I don't think it was anything the concern for me wasn't necessarily the performance. If Cam Rising was going to be back to his old self, it was more of the mental.
Yeah.
It was more of a mental thing for both of them, right? Brant Keithy hasn't played in over a year and a half. Cam Rising has gone over a year, so it was kind of the mentality of what they were going to do when they came into this one, and I thought Cam Rising and Brant Keithy both looked really well.
Yeah, really well. 5 drives, 5 touchdowns for Cam Rising, 10 of 15 passing, as you said. So 10 completions, 5 of them being touchdowns, 3 to Brant Keithy, 2 to Dijon Stanley. And that's who I want to talk about next, Alex. Dijon Stanley, what a performance from him, kind of a breakout. We had heard the coaches kind of mention him a little bit, but let's see, 6 carries for 34 yards. He led the team with carries. But then receiving, Alex, he had 3 catches, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Of course, 2 of those catches were on the wheel route out of the backfield. Same play 2 times, and both long touchdowns of 60-plus yards.
I thought running the exact same play like that for Dijon Stanley was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And good on Utah for capitalizing on both of them, right? That first touchdown, I think, really opened the game for Utah. And then from there, I think we kind of saw Dijon Stanley had a couple of good runs, had obviously the next really good wheel route that went in for that second touchdown. I was very impressed with what I saw from Stanley.
Yeah. He definitely established himself as a name to look out for the Utes this season. And it's really exciting to have just an absolute weapon like that. And, you know, they lined him up in the backfield and ran the wheel route, but he definitely seems like the type of gadget player. Earlier in the game, before he even had his first touch, they lined him up as a wide receiver and put him in a jet sweep motion. So he's a player that's going to be all over the field for the Utes, and he's going to be making big-time plays. So I'm really interested to see how they use that sort of weapon, because going into the Big 12, like having something like that is really exciting. And then, I don't want to hit on Brant Keithy too much, but I cannot overstate how good of a player he is. Like, he is just incredible.
He's absolutely incredible, and it's so good to have him back. Really glad he got 3 touchdowns. Again, just for the mentality, for the confidence of both Brant and Cam Rising. That third touchdown where he just carried the ball over past 4 defenders and forced his way into the end zone was absolutely fantastic. It looks like potentially we are getting Brant back to his old self.
Yeah, which is, one of the best tight ends in the country, if not the best tight end in the country. And so Cam Rising and Brant Keithy showing off that connection early, that's going to be so much fun to watch all season. They're going to be a big-time threat. And that's that for the offense. Let's move to the defense, though. One of the biggest takeaways was Kenan Johnson going down with injury, and it sounds like that's going to be a season-ending injury for him, and that really, really sucks because he's a 6th-year senior, transfer coming in his first year with the program, and the defensive backfield. Everywhere is going to be a strength for the Utes on defense, but like that defensive backfield was really supposed to be a strength. So losing Kenan Johnson really, really hurts, and I'm kind of worried about that going forward. And we're going to talk to Steve Bartle in the next segment, our Utes Insider here at KSLSports.com. But does that worry you, Alex, losing Kenan Johnson for the season?
Yeah, there's obviously going to be concerns there, considering that we've heard a lot of really, really great positives about Johnson heading into the season. Everybody was so excited to see how he kind of fit into this defense and see what he brought as a transfer student. And I think it also kind of affects the depth of that cornerback room, right? It was already a room where I feel like Utah has a lot of young guys that are maybe a little bit unproven, right? You think about Elijah Scooby Davis, you think about CJ Blocker, but now one of these 2 guys is going to have to step up. Obviously, all eyes are going to be turning to Smith Snowden to kind of step up, and I thought Smith Snowden played well against SUU, but now there's questions about the cornerback depth in that room.
Yeah, and depth, it sucks when you're already turning to your depth in week going into week 2 now. And Smith Snowden is a name to look out for, but he's more of a nickel player, so I don't know how much time he's going to see on the boundary there. Scooby Davis came in and he had an interception, but is he the caliber of player, to have an impact in the Big 12? So we'll see on that going forward. But defensively, there were still a lot of highlights outside of that. Tanuvasa was all over the broadcast, and it really sucked because the broadcasters sucked, Alex. They were mispronouncing names left and right. They kept talking about the Ochre Mountains. Nobody cares about the Ochre Mountains. We're on the Wasatch Front, baby, you know? But regardless, I mean, Tanuvasa had a great night, and it was really cool to see him having an impact because everybody knows how good of a player Junior Tafuna is, but Tanuvasa being there and being all over, that was really fun for me to see.
And again, he's another guy that was coming into this season with high expectations with Tanuvasa. Him and Tafuna, I think, are going to be an absolutely deadly combo in the Big 12. Very exciting to see them already game one, kind of getting into the rhythm of it, and their chemistry looks really, really well. Really liked what I saw from that Utah defensive line against SUU.
Yeah, and you talk about duos, it's kind of, you know, what you've got all over with this Utah defense. I mean, you've got Connor O'Toole and Van Fillinger on the defensive end spots.
Who I thought also looked really great.
Oh, yeah, they looked great. O'Toole, let's see, 3 tackles, tackle for loss. Excuse me. Sorry, something in my chest. Van Fillinger, 2 sacks, though, 2 tackles for loss, and they were all over. And then Lander Barton, he was there making plays, and they're just all over. This defense is swarming, and it didn't take long for them to be really everywhere. Like, no matter, I mean, SUU, they started off moving the ball really well their first 2 drives, but then after that, it seemed like they couldn't do anything because obviously it's 11 on 11, but it seemed like it was 22 versus 11 because there are just Utes all over, and they swarm. They swarm to the ball.
And you can't forget about Logan Fano. That's a guy we also have yet to mention. Not the most eye-popping stats with the 0.5 tackle for a loss and the 0.5 sack, but he's also a guy coming back from injury, was looking to have kind of a breakout season last year before he went down, really hoping he can kind of replicate that, and good to get his first game under his belt and have the opportunity to be back on the field because I'm very excited to see what Logan Fano can do this season as well.
Exactly. And then so basically Utah pulled their starters at halftime, right, because they were up so big. They were really comfortable with what they saw, didn't want to risk any more injury. And then the second half, well, really the end of the first half and the second half, we got to see Isaac Wilson in his first college action. And Alex, I'm really curious to see your thoughts, see what you think about Isaac Wilson and how he played, because I have some thoughts that we'll get into, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
I think it's fine. I think he did fine for his first start, right? He's an 18-year-old true freshman coming in and playing at Rice Eccles for the first time ever as a Utah member, right? I was big on, kind of letting him go out there and allow him to fail. Allow him to throw that interception. Allow him to take that sack on his first play, right? Allow him to kind of fail and get comfortable in that offense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That definitely makes sense. And 7 of 11, 74 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, his final stat line. The touchdown throw was a beauty to Caleb Lohner.
Yes.
Really utilizing his skills as a basketball player, really tall, really long arms. He basically put it on the back of the defender, allowed Caleb Lohner to go up and over the back of the defender and grab that ball. That was really something to see. And I agree. I think Isaac Wilson played fine. He's a true freshman. He's 18 years old. It's important to keep that in mind. But I did come away with a bit of a worry about this. And let me tell you why, Alex. I genuinely don't feel comfortable if Isaac Wilson is the second best quarterback on the Utah roster, And no fault to him at all because he is a true freshman and he is young and he's going to make mistakes. But if you're telling me that is the second best quarterback on the Utah roster, it tells me that they're in the same spot that they were in last year, that if Cam Rising goes down, then they have no hope to win the conference.
It's a valid point. That's a valid point and a really, really great statement because when that decision was made to make Isaac Wilson number 2, to make him to announce him as the backup, it did kind of bring up some questions about where Brandon Rose was and where Heward was. We almost expected, I almost thought Heward was going to take that number 2 spot because he has experience playing at this level. He is a transfer, and so I thought Heward kind of was going to take that opportunity to be number 2. So it's just brings up the question of where Brandon Rose is and where Sam Heward is.
Yeah, Brandon Rose has been in this program for a couple of years now. He's a redshirt sophomore, so really this is his third year in the program. Sam Heward, former 5-star recruit, played at Washington, didn't really do much, and then I believe he went to Cal Poly, didn't really do much there. So yeah, for Sam Heward to come in with his pedigree, his experience, and then Brandon Rose with his experience in the program, and both of them lose the job to Isaac Wilson, it just makes me ask the question, okay, is Isaac Wilson really the second best quarterback on this roster, or is it more of a, hey, none of these guys move the needle if Cam Rising goes down, so let's make Isaac Wilson the QB2, so that way if Cam does go down, then we can just get Isaac Wilson reps because he's our guy of the future, regardless.
And I can see it going that way. Absolutely. I can see it absolutely going that way. But it's also interesting because we heard a lot of positives about Brandon Rose prior to him going down last season, prior to that injury. There was a lot of positives coming out about Brandon Rose kind of taking that coaching staff by surprise, and now we don't necessarily hear that. Now we haven't really heard about Brandon Rose or his development or kind of what he's been doing. So it is a little bit concerning to maybe if Utah have to go in a situation where Cam Rising goes down, it's going to be interesting to see who really steps up. Is it really going to be Isaac Wilson? Are they going to want to preserve that red shirt if he hits those 4 games? Something to keep an eye on throughout the season as it goes. How much time does Isaac Wilson really get?
Yeah. And that's something, I think this is a really good conversation to have, and it's something I want to talk to Steve about next segment. Again, we're going to be talking to Steve Bartle coming up here in about 10 minutes. He's our Utah Insider at KSLSports.com, so we'll get his thoughts on that. But who else stood out to you on this, Utes roster, Game 1, Alex? I know, it's a question really of how much can you take away versus this SUU team who, no offense to my T-Birds, I love them to death, but they're an FCS team, and they're an average FCS team, I think. And so it's really hard to know what we're looking at in Game 1.
And I thought Kyle Whittingham kind of put it nicely in the post-game presser where he mentioned he doesn't necessarily want to call it a tune-up game, but that's kind of what it was. Yeah. It was a tune-up game to allow these players to tune up and get ready for Week 2. One of the guys that stood out for me was probably Mike Mitchell. I liked a couple of things that I saw from him out of the backfield, and mostly because I was looking at the running back room, because we've had those conversations about our concerns for this Utah running back room. So I was definitely keeping an eye on Mike Mitchell, Dijon Stanley, and those are the two that probably stood out to me, and then maybe Caleb Lohner. Yeah. I thought Caleb Lohner, for being a guy who's never played football before, I thought he did pretty well.
Yeah, so that was one of the bigger questions coming into the season. Caleb Lohner, former basketball player, just decided that he wants to play football because he's a really good athlete. How big of a role is he really going to have on this Utes team? And I mean, his first game, he catches a touchdown. He did only have the one catch, 20 yards for a touchdown. Again, it was a great throw by Isaac Wilson, but that's seemingly how they're going to use him, take advantage of his size, of his jumping ability, his big frame and his long arms. And, I know Jake and Ben, the show I produced for, they were kind of skeptical on how often he was going to see the field because basketball players aren't really known to be real tough physical guys like a tight end needs to be. But we saw Caleb Lohner get in there, get the touchdown, so maybe he is a player that the Utes are going to utilize, especially down there in the red zone. But I like that you bring up the running back room. I mean, Dijon Stanley had 6 carries, Mekhi Bernard 5 carries, Cam Rising himself had 4, Mike Mitchell had 6, Isaac Wilson had 5, Jalen Glover had 4, Charlie Vincent had 4. It's definitely a running back by committee this season, as opposed to having the real workhorse guy and then your third down back. And Kyle Whittingham, he had talked about this throughout the offseason, but then he talked about it a little more in the post game about how this is more of a committee.
The running back room as a whole, thought Mekhi Bernard gave us some quality runs in there. Jalen Glover had a nice run or two. Mike Mitchell, he's the closest thing to that big back that we have right now. Hunter Andrews, just a freshman, a true freshman, had a nice run and the ball popped out though. Exactly what we anticipated going into the game, it would be by committee. We wouldn't really have an RB1, and right now we're in the same boat, which is not a bad thing.
So I like that. I mean, it's the cards that they're dealt with right now. Not having a true RB1 on the roster, it's not a bad thing, especially if you're able to just keep having this stable of backs who They each bring a little something special to the table, and I think they all played pretty well outside of the fumble.
There was 2 fumbles.
Right.
'Cause Mike Mitchell also had one that kind of bounced back to him, which I thought was kind of lucky.
Yeah.
It was kind of lucky. So I think that's something that they definitely need to clean up, hold on to the ball more, secure that ball a little bit more. But definitely running back by committee. I thought maybe we would have the opportunity to see one of these guys truly break out in the running game. I mean, Dijon Stanley obviously had a breakout, but I don't necessarily know if he had a breakout in the running game.
Yeah. 6 carries, 34 yards. It's whatever.
So it's going to be interesting to see kind of going forward if this running back by committee continues or if someone like a Mike Mitchell, like a Dijon Stanley, maybe even a Hunter Andrews kind of steps up and really takes that number 1 running back position for the Utah Utes.
Yeah, and Mike Mitchell was a name that we were all excited to see. He's a freshman coming in, and let's see, 6 foot, 211 pounds, and Coach Whittingham has mentioned that he's really the closest thing that they have to a big back. But, I mean, we know Jalen Glover. We know Mekhi Bernard. We've seen them. Okay, but Mike Mitchell and Hunter Andrews really were the 2 names that were like, okay, what can they do? So 6 carries for 21 yards for Mike Mitchell. Hunter Andrews, he only had 2 carries. I was hoping to see a little more for him from him, 2 carries for 17 yards. So we're going to see more of them throughout the season with this being a committee. But you're right. I was kind of hoping to see somebody pop off the screen, but nobody really did.
I thought it was interesting, too, that Jalen Glover had 4 carries for 15 yards, but his longest carry was 14 yards. So even Jalen Glover, who I think a lot of people had a lot of high expectations when he came into the program, is kind of, I don't know, maybe struggling. I've still yet to see, I mean, he has the tools to be very successful, but I've still yet to really see them translate onto the field.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We'll see what Steve Bartle has to say about all of this. I mean, Utah getting the dominating 49-0 win over SUU on Thursday night. Steve Bartle, our Utes Insider for KSLSports.com. He's going to be joining us next. Stay tuned, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Week 1 of college football is underway. Number 1, Georgia, squaring off against Clemson. This game is 0-0. Just over 4 minutes left in the first quarter. Georgia has the ball, 40-yard line. Let's see if they can get some points on the board. But Alex, you and I had a good conversation to start the show off talking about the Utes and their 49-0 win over SUU on Thursday night. Let's get out to the zone vote and hear what our next guest has to say about it. He's Steve Bartle, our Utah Insider for KSLSports.com. Steve, what's up?
What's up, fellas? How we doing?
Doing good. We're super excited to have you on.
Yeah, no, definitely. Man, college football, it's back. Been watching a couple games so far, and this is nice. The weather's changing. It's getting cooler. It's nice. Football is back.
Yeah, did you feel that when you stepped out this morning? It's getting a little bit chilly out there.
Dude, I felt it Thursday. I'm not kidding. Like I woke up Thursday and felt it was like the cool, crisp air, and then today, last night, like it's getting cooler. It's perfect, man.
That's awesome, man. Hey, quick question. You obviously were at the game on Thursday night. Talk to us just about the environment at Rice-Eccles Stadium. How is it like being back out there to watch the University of Utah back on the field?
Yeah, it was good to be back up at Rice-Eccles Stadium, and it was interesting. Obviously, it's not the same. So it wasn't the same sort of matchup as a Florida Gators coming to town. So there was a different level of anticipation and a different level of excitement. But I still think, for the fan base, that there was a lot of excitement and interest in this game because of this Utah football team specifically and who's on it, and Cam Rising and Brant Keithy making their return. I just think there's a lot of there was a lot of interest and excitement to see those guys on the field again. And so, there was definitely that. And then with Alex Smith being the inaugural inductee into the Ring of Honor, I think there was also, a lot of excitement for that as well. So, it was good to be up there. The crowd was filling in, before kickoff, which was, it's always good to see that, get there on time. It's always good to see that. And then, the game kicks off and Utah ultimately just took care of business the way that they needed to in that sort of game. So, in terms of the atmosphere and environment, it's clear Utah fans are ready for some football.
I think we're all ready for some football across the state and some more games later on today. But, Steve, I want to hear your thoughts on Dorian Singer. He only had 2 catches for 31 yards, and Jake and Ben had a conversation about this yesterday. They like to joke about how Utah's wide receivers, all they do is block and yada, yada, yada. I mean, the way I look at it, Cam Rising only had 10 completions, and 2 of those were for long touchdowns where they didn't need to drive down the field anyways. So I guess, are we going to see more of a role from Dorian Singer and the Utah wide receivers as a whole, as opposed to mainly Brant Keithy being the target going forward?
Yeah, I do think so. With Dorian Singer, he's been tremendous all off season. There's been a buzz about him. Every time that we got to see him this off season, specifically in spring, he made plays, and then during fall camp, the buzz was just healthy around what he was doing, in practice and that sort of thing. So, there is a point of focus with Dorian Singer. They want him to be a productive receiver for them because they know, they need that element. And, for whatever reason, the ball just didn't go his way on Thursday night. And sometimes it just goes to other guys. And that's what happened. That's what, Cam, he's going to put the ball wherever the defense dictates, and he's going to find guys that are open, and that's ultimately what we saw with him going to Brant Keithy, him finding Dijon Stanley on that wheel route, and that's ultimately what happened Thursday night. Was just the opportunities, some guys getting open were not Dorian Singer, and that's fine. And so, but Dorian is going to be a significant part of the offense. I'm excited for him this season because he does bring a real a significant element to this offense with what he can do in the intermediate and deeper parts of the field. So he's going to play a big role this season. He didn't get off to a huge start in game 1, and that's fine. Brant Keithy scoring 3 touchdowns, Dijon Stanley scoring 2 huge wheel route touchdowns. That's exciting. That's what we needed to see. We needed to see something from the passing game with Cam, and that's what we saw. And Dorian's going to play. He's going to have his moment this season, and he's going to play a big role for Utah this year.
Keeping kind of the focus on the offense a little bit, we've heard about kind of how great the running offenses are in the Big 12. Utah is kind of maybe taking this running back by committee approach. How are we going to continue to see that kind of grow, and maybe who are kind of the younger guys to keep an eye out, as well as Mike Mitchell and Dijon Stanley?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think a lot of people were interested to see how that running back situation played itself out on Thursday, and with that sort of game, it's not the best game to gauge that. I think we'll get a much better feel for the running back situation, in week 2 against Baylor with them coming to town. Mekhi Bernard is going to play a big role, and he may not be a guy that gets 10, 15 carries a night, but he'll be a guy that gets 7 to 10 touches and is productive in both the running and passing game. Jalen Glover is going to be productive. Mike Mitchell is a guy that he just has the potential to be the bell cow. He has the sort of physical makeup, the physical qualities that you need, the mental qualities that you want to see out of a running back that'll handle that sort of workload. And so I think it's just a matter of time and him getting, adjusted to this level of competition on Saturdays. And he got off to a decent start. He scored a touchdown, and Utah still ended up with 185 yards on the ground. And I think they had something like 7 guys with a carry, eight or maybe even 8 or 9 guys with a carry. And so I don't think we'll see that. I do think we'll see this rotation shrink quite a bit, but I do think what you'll see is Mike Mitchell, Mekhi Bernard, Jalen Glover, those will be the primary 3, and then Dijon Stanley will continue to have that same sort of role where he's kind of that change of pace, that super fastball that you just don't see coming. Utah will continue to utilize him in that manner. But ultimately, I expect Mike Mitchell to kind of take control of the bulk of the workload here, just again, because he has the qualities that you look for physically and mentally.
Steve Bartle, Utes Insider for KSL Sports, joining us right now on the Saturday show. Steve, I had an interesting thought coming out of this game, and I want to know what you have to say about this. So obviously we got to see Isaac Wilson get his first college reps on Thursday night, and he was a bit shaky, as you would expect from a true freshman. Is he really the second best quarterback on this roster, or is he QB2 because if Cam Rising goes down, then all hope is kind of lost and you just want to prepare Isaac for the future?
It's a great question, and really the only coaches that know the truth, the only guys that know the truth of that are the coaches. But ultimately, I think Isaac, based on what I've heard and what I've gotten from others, is that Isaac genuinely earned the backup quarterback spot. And he's come into the program and in 6 months has been able to execute the offense at a level that is on par with everybody else, and with the sort of talent and the sort of willingness that Isaac has to make throws, I think has been a good thing for him. Now, obviously, he's got to learn and grow through mistakes, and that's going to come with experience. The 2 interceptions, one was I understand the decision and why he decided to throw it where he threw it. He just put too much on the ball, didn't place it where he needed to. The second interception was just a bad decision, and those are the types of things that he's going to learn, that you can't always force it. You can't force it at this level, and so I do think that Isaac genuinely earned the backup quarterback spot just based on what I've heard and what I've learned over the last few months. And, he's absolutely going to be, a focus. There's going to be a focus around him because of the situation with Cam Rising, where he's at in his career, where Isaac is at in his career. Ultimately, people would love to see Isaac take control of the quarterback spot, after Cam, moves on from the program. But it's not like they're trying to make this happen. Isaac still has to go out and earn it each and every day in practice, and he's got to take care of his business. Utah's going to continue to recruit to the position to keep that competition alive, and to keep that, not that competition alive, but to keep the health in the room strong, and to keep that room, loaded with good talent, because Cam is moving on after this season, and there's going to be a quarterback battle, and Utah is going to be as prepared as they can to have a good quarterback in place, after Cam moves on. And so, Isaac is the guy right now, but he's, like I said, he's just got to continue to take care of his business and continue to get better.
Steve, let's take a look at this defense now. A lot of positives coming out from the defensive side of the ball for Utah. How much weight do we put on a shutout against an FCS school?
Not a whole lot. Obviously, a shutout, it feels great. It's always good to see that. But I do think there are things that you can take away in terms of the ways that certain guys look, right? It was good to see Logan Fonnell on the field. He had a couple of pass rush reps that looked great. He looked fantastic. Zamiah Vaughn in coverage, looked the part. Smith Snowden looked fantastic in the nickel, in terms of just how he moved, his tenacity around the line of scrimmage. That's going to be an important element that he needs to play with in that nickel position, because it is not just a coverage position. It's a physical, demanding position, because you're such a factor in the run game. And so it was good to see that from him. I think he ended with 2 tackles for loss. The defensive line controlled things. You look at the time that SUU had, the SUU quarterbacks had in the pocket. They did not have a lot of time, and that's just a credit to the defensive line. So overall, you're not going to take away a whole lot from this sort of matchup, just because there is such a discrepancy in terms of the talent levels here. But in terms of just looking at guys and how they looked, how they performed, you can come away feeling pretty positive about certain individuals and how the unit performed overall, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything once we get to some of these other games with Baylor and Utah State and Oklahoma State, Arizona, and all that.
Steve, Kenan Johnson left the game with an injury, and it sounds like it's going to be season-ending for him. How does Morgan Scally fill in that cornerback number 2 spot, and is that going to be a worry for this Utah defense for the rest of the year?
Yeah, Kenan Johnson was a guy that coming into the season, there was a lot of optimism around. He had a great offseason as well, and it's unfortunate to see an injury like that in a game like that. It's tough. But what we saw in that game was, Elijah Davis, Scooby, you'll see him referred to as Scooby, fill in, and he played pretty well. Ended up with an interception, so he's going to be a guy. But the guy that I think everybody is interested in hearing and learning more about is Cameron Calhoun, who was a transfer they brought in from Michigan, redshirt freshman who came in, and he kind of established himself as the third cornerback in the room behind Zamaya and behind Kenan Johnson. He's a guy that good size at 6 foot, I think 180 pounds, good athlete, moves really well. He's going to be the guy. He had an injury this offseason, required surgery. He's been working his way back into things. He got back to practice about 10 days ago. So he's been getting back into the flow and getting back into the mix. I think he's going to be taking that next step in terms of his return and the process in his return next week. We'll see where he's at. There's a belief that he's going to be ready to go for Baylor, and if he is, he'll work his way back into the mix. But for now, it's going to be Scooby Davis. It's going to be some of the other guys. CJ Blocker is going to have to step up as well. But Cameron Calhoun will absolutely figure into this. And then, Kyle Whittingham also noted that Dale Johnson could potentially move to the outside as well, which, you look at his frame, you look at his athletic qualities, it'd be pretty intriguing to see him, outside at cornerback. He's currently working at free safety. He was the nickel last year, so he's familiar with it, and he's gotten reps at that position as well. So Utah's got options here to move forward at cornerback, to have a good option in place, to have good players in place. But I do think ideally what they're going to do is get Cameron Calhoun back, have Scooby Davis there as kind of that third guy. And then you still have Teo Johnson at free safety, and you go from there. Smith Snowden can also get some work on the outside as well. So you have some flexibility, some versatility with the guys in the secondary. But ultimately, I think you'll see a lot of Cameron Calhoun this season. You'll see some more Scooby Davis, potentially Smith Snowden working outside as well, and Teo Johnson potentially moving to the outside as well. But I don't think Utah wants to do that with Teo. I think they'd prefer to keep him at free safety, but it could get to that point where they need to move him outside the cornerback.
Steve, we appreciate you taking some time to join us on a Saturday morning. We appreciate all the work you put in all week on KSLSports.com. Have fun watching football today, and thanks again for hopping on with us.
Definitely. Appreciate you guys. Enjoy your Saturday.
There we go. That's Steve Bartle, the Utah Insider for KSL Sports.com. You can read all of his work on there. He had a lot of great takeaways that he put up on the website, so definitely go check that out. But he's great.
He's awesome. He's been really, really great to add to the KSL Sports coverage of Utah. Very smart guy.
Yeah, he's incredibly smart. He's
Very
incredibly plugged in to the Utah football program. So I really like his answer about filling in for Kenan Johnson on the outside. And, I was looking at this depth chart, and Teo Johnson played corner last year, and then they moved him to safety. And Kyle Whittingham gushed about how good of a safety he was. So I was wondering if he could potentially be an option to fill in at corner. So it was interesting to hear that Steve brought that up as kind of a last resort, worst case scenario, but it definitely is a card on the table.
Yeah, and I'm glad he mentioned Cameron Calhoun because that's a guy, because he was hurt, didn't get to play this game, and he's someone that I kind of overlooked. And he brought up a really good point too with Cam Calhoun, who they've been kind of hyping him up too throughout the fall camp, spring camp, and they were really excited to see him come in. Gets hurt, has to go down, and he'll be rejoining the group this week. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where he fits into that cornerback situation now with Kenan Johnson down.
Utah gets the 49-0 victory over SUU. They're going to be taking on Baylor a week from now. That is going to be a non-conference game, but it's a kind of a sneak peek at the Big 12 opponents.
Weird.
But, yeah, it was great to see Utah get out there, get the win. And then, yeah, can't wait to see what's next for the Utes. What's next for us, Alex? We're going to get to technical fouls, one of our favorite segments here on the show. I have a really funny one. Somebody got to be really embarrassed. That's all I'm going to say, but you'll definitely want to hear that. Coming up next will be technical fouls here on the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
If you're coming from the street with dirty shoes on your feet, that's a technical foul. If you switch the radio to some modern music show, that's a technical foul. If you touch the thermostat,
You'll get hit with a bat.
'cause that's a technical foul.
You will feel my wrath.
That's a technical foul.
Personal foul, 69, offense. He was giving them the business.
A technical foul.
It's time for technical fouls, one of our favorite segments here on the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Christian Esparza here, Alex Napoles as the co-host. Alex, it's week 1 of college football. That means everybody's excited. Everybody may be a little too excited. We're getting some pretty embarrassing moments across college football. I'll start things off with technical fouls. I'm going to go with the Minnesota Golden Gophers fireworks operator. Minnesota was one of the first teams to play week 1 for college football. They played Thursday night against UNC. UNC was up 19-17. Minnesota had the chance to kick the game-winning field goal, except the kicker missed it. You wouldn't know, though, because the fireworks operator set off the fireworks after they missed the game-winning field goal.
What an astronomical fail.
That's so bad. I don't know if maybe he thought that it went in or if like his hand slipped or what, but it's really funny to watch the video. I'm watching it on Twitter right now. It's heartbreaking, obviously. You missed the game-winning kick and then the fireworks behind the scoreboard start going off, and I thought it was hilarious when I saw that.
Imagine being that kicker, man. Imagine missing that field goal to give your team the win, to give your team the chance to go 1-0. You miss the field goal, and then the fireworks go off right after to just kind of rub a little bit of salt into that wound.
Oh, bad look as the Golden Gophers fall 19-17 to the University of North Carolina. That's my quick technical foul. Alex, you're up next.
Ours, we'll keep it a little bit local. You teased it a little bit earlier, and from what I've been able to gather on the interwebs and online is people were not happy with the ESPN broadcast.
I definitely wasn't.
For Utah SUU. I wasn't either. And there was a situation where they cut to Brandon Rose warming up on the sideline, and then the offense for Utah trotted out. That touchdown for Caleb Lohner came through, and here was the call on that touchdown.
Now a third-year sophomore into the game for Utah. It is Brandon Rose. Rose takes a shot toward the end zone. That ball is caught for a touchdown, Caleb Lohner. All right, I got to admit, I completely screwed that up. It looked like they were going to bring Brandon Rose into the game based on warming up on the sideline. That was a touchdown pass for Isaac Wilson. That was a great throw by Wilson.
Screwed it up just a little bit.
All right, I got to admit, I completely screwed that up. That's awful. That's Isaac Wilson's first collegiate touchdown pass, Alex.
And it will forever be remembered as Brandon Rose's because of the call.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it was a rough broadcast all night from mispronunciations on a lot of names for both teams, which is really frustrating because obviously Utah and Southern Utah, they're going to have a lot of Polynesian names on the roster, but you don't really have an excuse because, as somebody who does play-by-play, you get pronunciation guides.
You do.
And for D1 college football games, you get these pronunciation guides days in advance. So you have no excuse to not know how to pronounce these guys' names. Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose, they wear different numbers. It's not hard to. I mean, you should have a spotter if you're doing this game. I don't know who told him that it was not number 11 throwing the ball. I mean, I get that you see Brandon Rose warming up, but you see number 11 taking the snap and dropping back. That's not Brandon Rose.
That was a fail.
That's Isaac Wilson, especially with Isaac Wilson being such a big name because he's a local guy here, but even nationally, everybody knows Isaac because he was a really highly rated recruit, and his brother is famous. Everybody knows Isaac Wilson.
And I think because I was in here, I didn't necessarily pay attention to when Utah trotted out. So I was like telling these guys in the studio, I was like, oh, it's interesting that Brandon Rose comes in and his first throw is a touchdown.
Yeah.
But then they panned to Isaac Wilson's family, his mom, his dad, and Zach Wilson. And I was like, wait, why are they showing the Wilsons if it was Brandon Rose? And then he was like, oh, hey, you know what? I completely screwed that up.
All
and
right.
I was like,
I completely screwed that up. At least the camera guy got it right.
He
At
did.
least the
He
camera
did.
guy didn't show Brandon Rose's family.
That's true. That would have been a little bit more awkward. It's already awkward. That would have been the cherry on top.
Oh, that is rough. It was a really, really rough first broadcast for ESPN Plus. I don't know the guy's name, but yeah, it was fun. Well, even Ben Anderson was talking about, like, he was sitting there doing laundry and kind of had the game on as background noise. And like you said, like, you hear Brandon Rose comes in, throws a touchdown, and it's like, oh, we've got a battle for QB2. Brandon Rose's first pass is a touchdown. Isaac Wilson had been struggling all game. But no, that was Isaac.
It was Isaac.
All right, that's it for technical fouls. Coming up next, Alex, we're going to talk to Jake Hatch. BYU kicks off tonight against Southern Illinois. Jake Hatch is going to be on the pregame show at 5 o'clock here on The Zone. Really excited to hear what Jake has to say about BYU, so stay tuned. Jake Hatch coming up next here on the Saturday show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.